The gate agent's words exploded across the terminal. "Get out of here! You don't belong!" She barked, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. The chatter died instantly. Coffee cups froze mid-sip. Every sound was swallowed by the weight of her accusation. Danielle blinked, clutching her daughter's hand tighter. I don't understand," she stammered, her voice shaking. "This is our flight. This is our ticket." The agent's lip curled, eyes sharp with disdain. "Enough," she snapped. "Step aside before I call security." Danielle's chest tightened. Around her, silence pressed in heavy and merciless. She thought of the months she'd worked double shifts to afford this trip, the sacrifices stacked behind every dollar spent. And now, with a single shout, all of it felt like it was being ripped away. Her daughter tugged her sleeve, whispering, "Mom, what's happening?" But Danielle couldn't answer. Not yet, because the cruelty was only beginning. Every gaze shifted toward them. Passengers froze, their boarding passes clutched like shields. Whispers slithered through the crowd. Did she fake her ticket? Probably trying to sneak on. Danielle's cheeks burned, heat crawling up her neck. She forced herself to stand taller, though her knees wanted to give way. She wanted someone, anyone, to speak up. But no one moved. Their silence was deafening, their stares sharper than knives. Her daughter's small hand trembled in hers. And that's when Danielle realized this humiliation wasn't private. It was a spectacle. The agent snatched the boarding pass from Danielle's hand. "Let me see that." Danielle held out the paper, her only proof of belonging. For a heartbeat, she thought maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was ending. Instead, the agent's hands moved fast, deliberate. Rip. The sound sliced through the air, louder than thunder in Danielle's chest. She watched in horror as the paper split in two, fluttering down like discarded trash. "Fake," the agent declared coldly. Pathetic attempt. The scraps of the ticket lay on the ground, but it wasn't just paper being torn. It was dignity. It belonged. It was every ounce of hope Danielle had carried to this moment. Her voice broke as she pleaded, "That was our ticket. I paid for it. Please, just look again." But the agent turned away, satisfied in her triumph. The words came like venom, dripping with contempt. "You people always try to sneak through." Gasps rippled through the terminal, but no one stopped her. No one corrected her. Danielle's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to shout back, but the insult pinned her in place. Those two words, "you people," reduced her entire existence to a stereotype, a lie, a weapon used against her. Her daughter's wide eyes searched hers, confused, afraid. Danielle forced a shaky breath, whispering, "It's not true, baby." Don't listen, but the damage had been done. The insult wasn't just spoken. It was planted. In the air, in the silence, in the minds of everyone watching. That's when the little girl's voice broke. A sob tore free, raw and piercing. "Stop yelling at my mom!" she cried, clutching Danielle's leg with desperate arms. The sound carried across the terminal, louder than any announcement on the speakers. Phones lifted into the air. Clicks, red dots, silent recording. Danielle's heart split as she bent down, wrapping her daughter close. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's here. Mommy's here." But inside she wasn't sure it was okay. Not when strangers stood by with cameras instead of courage. Not when cruelty paraded unchecked, and with every second the weight grew heavier. Because this wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was about survival. A crackle of radios, security boots thudding on tile. The hiss of the jet bridge doors sealing shut. The air thickened, suffocating. People shifted uncomfortably, torn between curiosity and unease. A cough, a shuffle, a muttered word. Then, silence. Danielle's chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. The world felt suspended, hanging by a fragile thread, and yet no one spoke for her. No one dared. It was as if the entire terminal held its breath, waiting to see her fall. She stood there, clutching the straps of her daughter's backpack, her knuckles white, her eyes locked on the shredded ticket scattered across the floor. Everything inside her screamed to fight back, to shout the truth. But her body refused. She was frozen, paralyzed by the weight of humiliation, betrayal, and fear. Around her, the crowd loomed like silent judges. She could feel their verdict in the air: guilty, unwelcome, less than. Her daughter's quiet sobs pressed into her side. Danielle blinked hard, swallowing the lump in her throat. But deep down, one thought rose, louder than fear. This can't be the end. Not like this. And just when she thought she couldn't endure another second, something shifted. A moment was coming that would change everything. "Mom, are we really going?" The little voice broke the silence of the room as Danielle folded clothes into a suitcase. Her daughter's eyes shined with a mix of disbelief and hope, clutching the small backpack she'd been saving for this exact day. Danielle looked at her, forcing a smile, though her heart carried the weight of months of exhaustion. "Yes, baby. We're going, just like I promised." The girl's grin spread wide, the kind of joy that made every sacrifice worth it. For her daughter, this trip wasn't just a vacation. It was proof that dreams, even ones stitched together by pennies, could come true. Danielle's chest tightened with pride and fear all at once. Because behind her daughter's excitement lay the truth. She had given everything to get here, and there was no room for failure. But she swallowed that thought, pulling her daughter close. "We'll make memories no one can ever take away." What Danielle didn't know was that the cost of this trip would not be measured in dollars, but in dignity. The suitcase didn't tell the whole story. Behind every folded shirt and rolled pair of jeans lived nights that nearly broke her. After long shifts, Danielle would sit at the kitchen table, coins spilling from a jar onto the scratched wood. Quarters, nickels, pennies, her hands trembling as she counted, then recounted, to make sure every dollar lined up. Some nights, she skipped dinner so her daughter wouldn't notice the fridge running low. Other nights, she dragged herself from one job to another, praying her body could keep up. "Almost there," she'd whisper, sliding a crumpled bill into an envelope marked Trip Fund. It wasn't just money. It was a sacrifice. It was her dignity stretched thin but never breaking. And though exhaustion clawed at her bones, she reminded herself, "This isn't just a trip. It's a chance for my daughter to feel she belongs." Yet the world had a way of reminding Danielle that no amount of saving could shield them from certain wounds. At work, Danielle had grown used to the sting of comments that never sounded like insults, at least not out loud. "You're so articulate, Danielle," a coworker once said, as though shocked that intelligence could live in her voice. Another had brushed past her in the break room, muttering, "Don't be so sensitive," when she raised a concern. Each time she swallowed it. Each time she smiled as though it didn't cut. Because survival meant silence, and silence meant keeping her job. But those wounds piled up. The kind no one else could see. The kind that lingered long after words left the room. And every time she pushed them down, Danielle thought of her daughter. One day she won't just endure these wounds. She'll rise above them. But first, Danielle had to prove it was possible. That night, after the last shirt was tucked away, Danielle knelt by her daughter's bed. "Baby," she whispered, brushing back a curl from her child's forehead. "This trip, it's more than just a plane ride. It's proof that you belong anywhere in this world." Her daughter's sleepy eyes blinked open. "Even if people don't want us there?" Danielle's heart clenched. She took her daughter's hand firmly. "Especially then. You hold your head high. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through it. Because a promise wasn't just words, it was armor. And Danielle was determined to wrap her child in it. This trip will be ours. A memory no one can steal. At least, that's what she believed as she closed the bedroom door. With the suitcase zipped tight, Danielle breathed in relief. The hardest part was done. Or so she thought. Every dollar earned, every wound swallowed, every prayer whispered, it had brought her here, to this moment of victory. But life had one last test waiting. And it wasn't at the kitchen table, or the workplace, or the late-night bus ride home. It was standing at the gate, and Danielle had no idea how much it would cost her. "Step aside, ma'am." The officer's tone wasn't loud, but it carried enough edge to freeze Danielle mid-step. Her daughter squeezed her hand tighter, eyes wide as if she'd done something wrong. Danielle's throat went dry. Others had passed through security without a second glance, shoes barely off before being waved ahead. But she was pulled aside, again. "Random check," the officer muttered, motioning her toward the table. Danielle forced a steady breath, unzipping her bag while heat crept up her neck. Her daughter whispered, "Mom, why us?" She managed a calm smile, though her stomach twisted. "It's fine, baby. Just routine," but the search dragged on. The wallet opened, clothes patted down, snacks inspected like contraband. Each second felt like judgment disguised as protocol. Passengers streamed past, glancing at her, some curious, others smug, no one stopping. And Danielle, already stretched thin from the sacrifices that got them here, felt the sting of being singled out once more. When the officer finally waved her through, he didn't even look her in the eye. Just a curt nod, as though she'd been a problem solved, Danielle picked up her bag, dignity frayed but intact. She told herself it was over, but unease clung to her like a shadow, whispering that this was only the beginning. "Good morning?" Danielle offered softly at the gate, her voice carrying the weight of exhaustion and hope. The agent didn't respond, didn't look up, didn't acknowledge her existence. But the very next moment, another passenger stepped forward, a white man with a casual smile. The agent's face lit up. "Good morning, sir. Have a great flight." Danielle felt her daughter glance up at her, silently asking why their kindness didn't deserve the same reply. She pretended not to notice, forcing her expression into something neutral. It was subtle, invisible to anyone who wasn't living it. But Danielle felt it deeply, as though the greeting withheld had branded her unwelcome before she even boarded. And yet, she stayed silent. Because silence sometimes felt safer. "Excuse me, I'm in a hurry." The woman didn't wait for an answer. She simply cut right in front of Danielle, dragging her suitcase like it belonged there. Danielle blinked, stunned. The gate agent looked up, saw it happen, and said nothing. Her daughter tugged her sleeve. "Mom, she skipped us!" Danielle's chest tightened. Every part of her wanted to speak up, to demand fairness. But the silence of the staff, the weight of all the eyes nearby, reminded her of the unspoken rule. If you push back, you'll be the problem. So she bit her tongue. She knelt, whispering to her daughter instead. "It's okay, baby. We'll wait our turn," but her own words tasted bitter. Because deep down she knew it wasn't okay. And pretending otherwise only deepened the ache. The gate agent finally called for her boarding pass. Danielle handed it over, passport in hand. The agent smiled, on the surface. But it wasn't real. Their eyes lingered too long on her photo, then on her face, back and forth like they were searching for something out of place. Danielle's heart ticked faster. She knew this look. That flicker of suspicion masked by a thin layer of customer service. Her daughter shifted nervously beside her, whispering, "Why's she staring like that?" Danielle didn't answer. She just kept her posture calm, even as her palms dampened. The agent's smile never reached their eyes. And Danielle felt the air grow heavier, as though she were being weighed and measured against a standard that never seemed to fit her. When the passport was finally handed back, Danielle exhaled, but too soon, because the final test was still waiting. Danielle pressed her boarding pass to the scanner. Beep, not green. Not the sound of welcome, but a sharp, unmistakable red. The machine blared, freezing the moment. Conversations halted. Footsteps stilled. Every head turned toward her. Her daughter clutched her arm, panic rising in her little voice. "Mom!" Danielle's pulse thundered in her ears. The gate agent leaned forward, voice suddenly cool. "Ma'am, step aside." It was the same phrase she'd heard at security. The same tone that reduced her to suspicion, not passenger. But this time, it wasn't just a procedure. It was public. And Danielle knew, as the silence pressed in, that this moment would mark the beginning of something she could not control. Because behind that red beep, humiliation and something far worse was waiting. "This ticket is fake!" The agent's voice cracked like a whip, slicing through the hum of the terminal. Danielle froze, her daughter's small hand trembling in hers. The words didn't make sense. Fake? She'd worked months for this trip, every dollar saved with sacrifice. And now, in front of strangers, she was branded a liar. The agent didn't stop there. They held up the torn boarding pass, waving it like evidence. "You think you can scam your way onto this plane? Not today." Murmurs rippled. Heads turned. Danielle's chest tightened as shame and fury collided. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Her daughter's whisper broke the silence. "Mom, what does she mean?" Danielle crouched down, forcing calm into her voice. "It's not true, baby. Don't worry." But worry was all she felt. Because in that moment, surrounded by strangers, she wasn't Danielle, the hard-working mother. She wasn't Danielle, the woman who had earned this ticket fair and square. She was painted as Danielle the fraud, Danielle the problem, and the cruel part? No one rushed to correct it. No one said a word. The humiliation didn't end with torn paper. It clung to her like a scar, made worse by the silence of those who chose to watch. But silence wouldn't be the end of it. Not here. Not yet. A rustle moved through the terminal. Hands slipped into pockets, pulling out phones. One by one, cameras pointed in Danielle's direction. Whispers followed. A man muttered, "Figures." A woman shook her head, sighing. "Always trying something." Danielle's stomach dropped. The weight of stereotypes pressed down harder than the stares. She could feel her daughter shrinking against her side, hiding from the attention. Not everyone said something, but silence spoke just as loudly. People avoided her eyes, choosing their screens instead, watching injustice unfold like entertainment. She wanted to scream, to demand, "Why won't anyone help me?" But the words never left her lips. Because once you raised your voice, the narrative could twist even further against you. So she stood there, heart hammering, surrounded by whispers that made her a stranger in her own country. And the betrayal stung worst of all. It wasn't just the agent against her. It was a crowd willing to let her stand alone. Danielle's hands shook as she dug into her purse, pulling out her ID, her receipt, her confirmation email printed in black and white. "Look," she pleaded, holding them up. "This is my ticket. I paid for this flight." But the agent's voice boomed louder, drowning hers out. "Don't waste my time. Step aside." The papers fluttered in her hands, ignored like trash. She wanted someone, anyone, to look, to see the truth sitting right there. But no one stepped closer. Her daughter clung tighter to her arm, whispering, "Show them, Mom. Please." Danielle tried again, voice cracking. "I have proof. Everything you need is right here." The agent sneered, snapping, "We've seen this before. Fake names, fake tickets. You're holding up the line." Each word crushed her dignity further. Not because the accusation was true, it wasn't, but because the lie was louder than her truth, and the louder lie was winning. The agent slammed a hand against the counter. "Step aside, or I'll call security." The threat sliced through Danielle's body like ice. Her daughter's arms wrapped around her leg, a tiny voice breaking, "Mom, I'm scared." Danielle bent down, forcing a steady smile. "It's okay, baby. I'm right here." But inside, panic clawed at her chest. She looked up at the agent. "You're making a mistake. Please, just check again." But reason didn't matter. The louder the agent grew, the more the crowd leaned back, avoiding involvement. Every second dragged. Every stare branded her guilty. The promise of a dream trip with her daughter was unraveling into a nightmare, fueled not by truth, but by power unchecked. And Danielle knew, once security arrived, things could spiral beyond her control. The sight of security uniforms made Danielle's breath falter. The officers didn't ask questions. They didn't ask for proof. They simply approached as if the decision had already been made. Her daughter whimpered, clinging tighter. Danielle's throat tightened, fighting the urge to cry. She hadn't stolen, she hadn't lied. But the weight of judgment wrapped around her like chains. Passengers stared, some whispering, some recording. Not one stepped forward. For years, Danielle had endured subtle cuts, comments at work, side glances in stores. But this was different. This was public stripping of dignity, branded as criminal without evidence. And in that moment, the deepest pain wasn't just the accusation, it was the silence of everyone who knew it was wrong and chose to watch anyway. So here's the question. If you had been there, standing at that gate, would you have spoken up, or would you have done what most did, lowered your gaze, lifted your phone, and let silence protect injustice? Because racism doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through inaction. And sometimes the quietest crowd is the loudest betrayal. What would you have done? Just as the officer reached for Danielle's arm, a voice cut through the chaos. Wait. Check the system again. The terminal froze. Danielle turned, heart racing, and in that moment the balance of power began to shift, though she had no idea how much was about to change. Check the system again, now! The command cut through the terminal, sharp and unshakable. A man in a suit, badge swinging from his neck, stepped forward. He wasn't just another passenger. He was a supervisor, and his voice carried the kind of authority that could silence a storm. The gate agent stiffened, jaw tight. Sir, I already told you. This passenger's ticket is void. Then prove it, the supervisor snapped. Run it again. Right here. In front of everyone. Gasps stirred in the crowd. For the first time, Danielle wasn't the only one demanding fairness. Her heart pounded, torn between hope and disbelief. Could this finally be the break she needed? The agent's hand trembled slightly as they turned to the screen, clicking with exaggerated confidence. Danielle clutched her daughter's hand tighter. Every second felt like an eternity, suspended between ruin and vindication. And as the crowd leaned closer, hungry for truth, the silence thickened into something electric. Everyone could sense it. The balance of power was shifting. But what the system revealed next left the entire terminal stunned. The screen flickered, then glowed with clarity. Passenger name, Danielle James. Status, confirmed. Ticket, valid. The supervisor's eyes narrowed. It's right here. She was cleared to board. Danielle's knees nearly gave out. Relief flooded her chest, but fury burned just as hot. The gate agent's face was drained of color. That can't be right. The ticket was flagged. No, the supervisor cut in. It was voided. By you. Just minutes ago? The crowd erupted in disbelief. Danielle stared at the agent, realization crashing over her. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, and now everyone knows. Phones tilted higher. Red lights blinking as they recorded every word. That's outrageous. She had proof the whole time. This is discrimination. Plain and simple. The whispers weren't quiet anymore. They spread like wildfire, fueled by anger. People who had stayed silent now murmured to one another, eyes flashing with outrage. Danielle felt the shift. For the first time all day, the weight of judgment wasn't crushing her. It was turning on the one who had tried to erase her. The truth wasn't just written on the screen. It was documented in dozens of videos, evidence no one could erase. And once those clips left this terminal, there would be no hiding what had been done. Danielle's voice rose, steady and unshaken. You tried to erase me, but not today. Her daughter looked up, eyes wide with pride. Danielle had been humiliated, cornered, nearly silenced. Yet here she stood, her truth undeniable. The crowd murmured in agreement. Strength radiated from her, not the kind born of anger, but the kind forged in survival. She held her head high. You tore my ticket, called me a fraud, and tried to strip me of my dignity. But dignity isn't yours to take. I earned this seat, and I will board that plane. The words landed heavy, echoing louder than the agent's shouts ever had. Cornered by truth, the gate agent stumbled over their words. It was a glitch. The system must have— No, the supervisor cut sharply. The system didn't void her ticket. You did. Eyes narrowed across the crowd. The murmurs grew harsher, sharper. The agent's hands trembled, their mask of authority collapsing. Excuses spilled like water, but no one reached to catch them. And in that unraveling moment, it was clear. This wasn't a glitch. This was bias, exposed in front of everyone. Security froze, torn between orders and evidence. Would they back Danielle, the woman finally vindicated? Or cling to the agent, desperate to protect their own? The terminal held its breath, every second stretching longer, heavier. Because the next choice would decide more than just a flight. It would decide justice, and no one could predict which way the scales would tip. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. Come with me." The supervisor's voice was steady, but his eyes carried shame. He extended a hand, guiding Danielle and her daughter forward. Whispers rippled behind them, but for the first time, those whispers weren't aimed at her. Danielle held her daughter close, every step away from the chaos feeling like a victory. The supervisor leaned in softly. "You should never have been treated this way. Please let me make it right." Her throat tightened. For hours, she had been made to feel small, powerless, erased. Now, with the crowd watching, her dignity was being restored piece by piece. But justice had only begun. Behind them, the gate agent was pulled aside. The same passengers who once looked past Danielle now turned their eyes on the woman who had tried to strip her of her place. She lied. She almost ruined that family. This was pure discrimination. The air grew heavy with judgment. For the first time, the agent wasn't in control. She was the one shrinking under stares, her authority stripped bare, and this time no smile or excuse could save her. Phones never lowered. The red recording lights blinked like silent witnesses. The agent's face paled as realization sank in. This wasn't just humiliation in a terminal. This was evidence, proof of her racism and betrayal, about to live forever online. And once it left these walls, there would be no taking it back. Danielle's steps down the jet bridge felt different now. Her back straightened, her chin lifted. Quiet claps began, then grew, rising behind her like a wave. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every soft applause carried weight. The weight of respect, of vindication, of dignity restored. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. "Mom," her daughter whispered, eyes shining. "You're the strongest person I know." The words pierced deeper than any insult ever could. Danielle bent low, kissing her forehead, tears threatening to spill. Strength wasn't in silence. Strength was in surviving and standing tall after the storm. They tried to take her seat. Instead, they gave her a voice, and that voice would echo far beyond this terminal, reminding everyone who watched, racism loses its power when the truth refuses to be silenced. But the real question still lingers. How many others never get this chance? What would you have done? That's not just Danielle's question, it's yours. When she stood frozen at the gate, accused and humiliated, dozens of eyes watched. Some filmed, some whispered. Most stayed silent, and silence speaks louder than words. Would you have stepped forward? Would you have defended her in front of strangers? Or would you have looked away, hoping the moment passed quickly? The truth is, injustice doesn't just survive because of those who spread it. It survives because of those who refuse to challenge it. So I'll ask again, what would you have done? History has shown us something painful. Racism doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in the quiet moments where people say nothing. That gate agent had power because silence protected her. Every unspoken word from the crowd gave her strength. Every averted gaze allowed the cruelty to continue. And that's the truth we can't escape. When we do nothing, we are part of the injustice. The question is, will we let that silence keep winning? Danielle's story cannot be buried under whispers. It deserves to be heard, remembered, and carried forward. If this moment shook you, don't let it fade. Share her voice. Comment your thoughts. Pass this story on. Because silence protects racism, but sharing stories like hers shatters it. They tried to erase her in a crowd of silence. Instead, she became a voice that refuses to disappear. And maybe that voice now lives inside you,